What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Eric, aka Young God, coming to you live in the Green Dungeon, giving it to you real raw rugged. And I'm gonna let the person introduce himself over the FaceTime call. Who do we have today?
Yo, it's Anthony Fantano, internet's busiest music nerd. What's going on?
I'm just gonna start us off by saying that you have the yellow flannel on, I have the yellow bonnet on. If this interview is not classic, then it's a big disappointment. So we gotta make this a very classic interview, man. But yeah, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm glad that we're color coordinated. We didn't plan this at all.
We didn't plan this at all. I just threw on the yellow bonnet today. Before we even get into this interview, really, I know a lot of people are gonna comment like, "Oh my gosh, Eric, how do you know Anthony? You know NeedleDrop, this and that." So I don't know if you remember the story on how you found me or how we found each other. If you do, I want you to explain that story for them.
I think I just, did you comment on? I think you were just like I think you were commenting crazy shit on my Instagram, weren't you? About like my auntie and stuff.
No, it did not happen.
Or I can't remember how I know that I know my first exposure to you was like I think it was Instagram, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was Instagram, and I just thought all the shit that you would say on Instagram all the time was hilarious. Like, again, talking about your auntie shit and, the way you dress or the things you'd be eating or, just talking about, like, how slick you are and, like, dressing ridiculous. And I can't remember if I saw you saying stuff on my page or if, like, there was a message that went between us, or if like I literally just stumbled upon you by clicking on some random bullshit. I know that you watched me already.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I can't remember the exact connection, but I just remember the first time I stumbled across your page, and I see a lot of people's pages on Instagram. People like comment something or whatever. But I just remember my first impression of your page was just that you were hilarious, and and you weren't doing anything then that you are now.
Yeah.
At least that I'm aware of. Like, you were pretty much just like being ridiculous on your page for you and your friends, and that's it. Like, now you're like number one internet content creator, number one interviewer.
I try.
So it's you've come a long way. I'm glad I was able to kind of see you then predict that sense of humor would take you somewhere.
Well, I'll tell you how I remember because it was really random. I just, like I said, I was always watching your videos, and I just found you on Instagram one day. I was like, oh, NeedleDrop has a Instagram. I'll follow him. And I'm going to say about 5 hours later, you followed me. Like, out of nowhere. I didn't comment or anything. I was like, that's weird. I was like, he doesn't follow that many people. So I was just like, okay. So then I think later that day, it was the picture, because you screenshotted me a picture that I posted and you sent it to me, because it was later that day. I seen a picture of a guy. He had like a whole bunch of Jordan shoes, and he made a heart of them, and he got in like the middle of the heart, and he took a picture. I was like, wow, this is a very stupid picture. So I got like a whole bunch of Jordan flip flops, and I made a heart I made a heart of some Jordan flip flops, and I got in the middle of the heart, and I made like a ridiculous like caption or whatever. And you screenshot that to me. You was like, I knew I followed you for a reason, and I was like, what's going on? I was like, does he want some flip flops? What's gonna happen? So then that's how it all started. And yeah, I just gotta say, thank you for just being a generous guy. Like you'll tweet something out of mine, or you'll comment on something of mine, or you'll just do things that I don't actually do. You don't have to do that. So I don't think I ever really told you this, but I just want to say thank you for just being a nice guy, man.
No, thank you for just being a good fan. Sometimes people get crazy. Sometimes I respond to people, or I hit people up because I think they're funny or I think they're doing something interesting, and they don't know how to fucking act. And you've been super chill and smart and awesome the whole time. So I did follow you for a reason.
Yeah.
I followed you for a reason.
That's a good point you made. You say people don't know how to act. Now, when I think about my subscribers that don't know how to act, that might be very different from somebody that you think don't know how to act. So what does that mean when you say somebody that doesn't know how to act?
Dude, if you could look into my Instagram, like, you know how like someone sends you a message on Instagram but they're not following you, or if they're not friends with you,
You gotta
like,
check it.
yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't go into your usual
Mhm.
Instagram messages. You got to go into that other section.
Yeah.
If I let you in that section, you would see so many white 16 to 25 aged male boys propositioning me for sex.
It's crazy.
Like, I don't even, just to like troll me. Just like, hey Melon, when are we gonna fuck? Like, if you can go into that section right now, you would see so much of that. And again, I don't know if it's like they're just trolling me, or if like somewhere quietly deep inside that's like that's their fantasy. Maybe that's potentially the case too.
That's crazy.
You never sent me a sex message.
Never.
So you're like you're a cut above. You're a cut above. There's the dregs, which I'm sure most people who enjoy my content, they just literally watch the video and they maybe leave a comment, or they maybe even most likely don't even do that, and they just kind of go on about the rest of their day, and they just kind of live life.
Mm-hmm.
But still, like that class of people, I don't know what you want to call them, class of people who dudes, 16 to 35, they just hit me up in the Instagram DMs trying to like get me to, I don't know, meet them somewhere for a one night stand. I have no idea.
See, that's crazy. Like, all right, so your fans is actually a part of this interview, because I have a friend named Ken Bishop. Shout out to Ken. I think I sent you a screenshot of something he said. I think he called you the official black representative of the culture because you rated Cardi album. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, the voice of the culture.
Yeah, the voice of the black culture. Shout out to him. So
it was over the Die Lit.
Yeah. It was over Die Lit review. So I was we was doing something. It was on I think we were playing Fortnite and we were talking, and I think I was on Instagram, and I was like, Anthony does he's like going on tour or whatever, and he was like, why is he on tour? I was like, I don't know, I guess he's doing meet and greets, because I really wasn't sure what you were doing on tour. But I seen a picture you posted where somebody like dressed as you, and I was like, hey, because we all do a podcast together, and I was like, hey, what if we got to a point where we started doing meet and greets and people started dressing as us? And he was like, that would just be the weirdest thing, and I wouldn't want that. So for you, is that like you see somebody like come up to you, and it's like, I don't know, it's weird because I feel like I'm a nice guy. But if somebody just came up to me like in a bonnet, like a white guy, he was like, hey, this is white my ass quality. Hey, Eric. Like, I would just be like, what are you doing? So how do you react to that? Because I don't know how I react to it.
Honestly, like, I feel like if I woke up one day and that was the state of things, like, I would probably just freak out, and it would be really weird, and it would be hard to kind of like make sense of.
Mm-hmm.
But because all of this is kind of like snowballed and grew so slowly over such a long period of time, like I've been on YouTube since 2009 making the NeedleDrop videos, and I've sort of seen the fandom of everything sort of slowly grow from there. So I feel like I've kind of exposed myself to that craziness in like small doses, sort of like maybe radiation or something. So now I'm kind of like, I don't know, gotten an immunity to it in a way. Like, clearly there are some people who do overstep the line. Like I did one of these shows, which it is part meet and greet, but then there's also like literally like a performance aspect to it. Like Calcio Chesta comes out, does a few songs, there's like a video intro and outro. Then I come out, I'll do a bunch of various bits. During this previous tour, I did a stink piece video where I tore apart a Paul Joseph Watson video. I did a deep lyrical analysis of Smash Mouth's All-Star. We did a segment where I showed people a bunch of quotes, and the crowd had to guess whether or not it was a Kanye West tweet or was it a Charles Manson quote. So there's a bunch of different segments that we do during the live shows. And in the Nashville date, some guy showed up with a decapitated mannequin head, and it wasn't even like he unscrewed it from the mannequin or anything. It was like literally fucking busted off the mannequin and all jagged at the bottom. And he was one of the tallest guys there, and it wasn't the most well-lit club. So there's like this very, very tall, skinny, dark, shadowy figure holding a head over his head, like all the way in the back of the venue, which as I'm doing my performance, he's getting like closer and closer to the stage and like making his way forward, very slowly. The whole thing happened over the course of like an hour and 15 minutes. And like toward the very end of it, by the time that we're doing like Q&A and everything, because we do a little bit of Q&A at the very end, he's like hanging off the railing on the side of the stage, holding the head out at me, which if you look at my Instagram, you can actually find a picture of the guy holding the head in his arms as I'm just like holding the microphone out to him. Partially because I wanted to get a good look at him for the police report. He did anything crazy.
That's hilarious.
Like, Mr. Fantano, what did the man look like? He bludgeoned you with the decapitated mannequin head.
That's hilarious.
So there are people like that. You know, there are people like that who do get super crazy. Like, their actions make no fucking sense. Like, probably they're showing up to the show high or something, so nothing that they're doing seems weird to them. But at the end of the day, like, after kind of seeing how much people enjoy what I do for so long, and also kind of getting a real understanding of just how passionate people can get when it comes to something that they really, really care about, because, I mean, you have to consider that not only am I exposing myself to my fandom every day, but I'm exposing myself to other people's fandoms every day, too. You know, every single time I do a negative review of anything, like, I'm hit instantaneously with the people who are most passionate, care the most about that particular thing that I'm reviewing. They're like, fuck you, you're the worst, you're terrible. You know, and these people as well often will dress like, because they idolize their favorite artist, their favorite band, their, you know, whatever music scene that they pay tribute to, that they're a part of. So to me, when somebody shows up with a flannel, you know, at one of the shows, like, to me that just tells me that they love what I do, and it's mostly at a healthy level of interest in what I do too, because, like, believe me, like, it gets way crazier than just, like, showing up with a fucking pair of glasses and a flannel.
Yeah.
It gets way crazier than that. Actually, surprisingly, during this past tour, nobody showed up as Cal Chuchesta. Nobody showed up dressed as Cal Chuchesta. Nobody went that far. No one went that far. Maybe the next one.
Well, shout out to Anthony for being so cool about it. But if you're a white man and you come to me with like a bonnet and some tissue, I'm just walk away. Like, I do not want that in my life. So if you looking at this right now, like, hey, I'm coming to Eric and with a pink bonnet, yeah, I'm gonna tell you to go home, man. Don't never do that to me, man. That's crazy. But no, it's something interesting you say. You like, you know, it's like some people are like such fans that they might, you know, recreate your dress or whatever. But we could be honest here. Even in the music industry, there's a such thing as this. You have like sons, like you have like as Nicki Minaj said, all these bitches is my sons. Like, you have like people that literally, I feel like, watched your video and was like, you know what, I'm gonna try it, because they will use from the big vocabulary. And like, I feel like your words are used in context. I watch some people reviews and I feel like they just use a big word just because, like, hey, I'm just using a big word because it sounds impressive. So how do you feel about having quote unquote clones?
I think it's just kind of the natural reaction to when you hit upon an idea that people see it and they're like, fuck, you know, like, what, why didn't I think of it before? And part of the thing with my skill is, I mean, I may seem like a really big singular voice, but my whole, you know, shtick, my whole format, all of it, I mean, it's supposed to be simple. It's supposed to be minimal. It's supposed to be easy to recreate, because, you know, I'm trying to influence people to just kind of like do their own things, form their own opinions, because I sort of see what you and I and other people are on YouTube are doing as far as like talking about music, reviewing it in whatever kind of fashion they want to, you know, because your delivery is much more different from my delivery, which is much more different from like Dead End Hip Hop's or Big Quint's delivery or Spectrum Pulse's delivery. You know, copy the format, do it for yourself, because I see what, you know, not just me, but what we are doing as like the new wave. You know, like democratized music reviews. This is, you know, not necessarily coming from a pedestal and looking down to the audience, but this is more like getting on their level and having a conversation. You know, it's like, sure, there's a performance aspect to it, as there always is, because it's video. You want it to be entertaining, but you know, it's not coming from a place of like, I'm going to educate you. You know, it's like it's all about community. It's about you know, putting information out there for people to, you know, either take or leave, and putting opinions out there for people to either agree or disagree. It's not so much about trying to force ideas down people's throats as much as it is about just like trying to create conversations, stir the pot, get people to basically have pause and think about exactly why they like what they like or why they dislike what they dislike, to think just more critically in general about what it is they listen to, not necessarily to turn them off of what they like, but to basically make them more informed listeners so that they maybe have a deeper appreciation of what it is exactly they enjoy and why they enjoy it. Whether that be I tell you something great about some record that you also like that you didn't realize before, or something that you didn't notice before because you didn't listen to it as closely, or if I sort of challenge you on, like, let's say the new Drake album, which I don't like, but maybe some of the things that I like are positive for you. Maybe those things are fantastic, or maybe in your opinion there are certain things that I didn't bring up in the album review at all that to you is like a big pro to the record, but somehow didn't register to me at all. Putting ideas and opinions out there in such a way where people can sort of easily engage with them, struggle with them, consume them, that's kind of the name of the game. That's the point. And, I hope that more people are kind of like copying the format. That's what I want, because I sort of see the whole institution of music being sort of democratized with, people sort of deciding through streaming and through downloading what exactly it is they want to listen to, when they want to listen to it. And I sort of think opinions can very much work in the same way, because as far as like music reviews are concerned, there aren't as many gatekeepers as there used to be. It used to mean that a negative review could make or break your album. You get a series of negative reviews on a record from these publications that kind of decide who's hot and who's not. Your career is over. And now at this point, even with me being the most relevant music reviewer walking the planet, if I give your shit a 0, like, that doesn't mean your career is over. If you still got fans, if you still got people buying and streaming your shit, like, you still have a career. It's like, my opinion you might have some feelings over it. Maybe there might be some people who are really passionate about what I do who maybe want to try out your shit. But the thing is, like, just because I give your stuff a negative review doesn't necessarily mean it's over. I literally have no real sort of like direct control over the quality or the direction of your music career, even if I do throw a negative review out there, and a lot of the time even if I throw a positive review out there, because while there are some artists out there who, rightly you could say, okay, well, they kind of blew up after the Fantano review, or they were here and then they had a larger crowd after the Fantano review. While that does happen every once in a while, a vast majority of the 8s and 9s, the bigger scores that I give out, go to albums that don't blow up like that. It only happens every once in a while. Like, I can say something's great, but, some of the stuff that I like is kind of weird. Some of the stuff that I like is kind of off the beaten path. Some of the stuff that I like is kind of experimental. The audience has to be receptive to it in order for it to blow up. So it's like, I can't sort of take direct ownership over, whether or not an artist is successful. I can say that I said my piece and I push people to it, which is my job, but, not everybody takes to everything that I suggest. It's not so much about trying to win everything, but just showing up and doing your job and just trying to do the best that you can.
So it's interesting you bring that up, because that makes me think about once again, my friend Ken Bishop. We were sitting talking one day, and he was like, I hope you know that, like, one day when you get big, you may come across these people you give negative reviews to, and they may look at it as you're trying to take food out of their mouths, like you're trying to, like, harm their career. And he brought up people like Cardi, or even the Post Malone review that you put in your description one time that I did, just a couple other people. And he was like, just know that these people may want to fight you. So I was like, I hope it doesn't get to that. He was like, nah, these people like Cardi, whatever, they may see it like, oh, no, I don't see it as entertainment. I see it as like he's trying to basically take food out of, my family and my mouth. So I remember a long time ago, I watched something you did, and you were saying how you were Italian and how you were a little, like, short-tempered a little bit, so you can, like, kind of go off on somebody. So that makes me think, have you ever came into any encounters where an artist or a band or somebody wanted to physically, like, fight you and you were like almost like, yeah, let's get to it, because you were getting like angry, or has that never happened?
As of this point, no, that has never happened. I think one of the one of the first things everybody says to me whenever they meet me is like, "Whoa, hey, you're really tall. You're like 6'1" and super broad-shouldered and everything." And it's like I think that's enough to sort of put off some people who might sort of be trying to meet with me over like bad, with like bad intentions or something like that. Honestly, like, I'm more worried about, personally, like some kind of crazed fan of somebody doing something stupid more than I am of a particular artist or something like that. If a particular artist I know had a super bad past or like a reputation or something like that, I'll do my best to sort of put things in such a way where I try to make it clear that, like, this is my opinion at the end of the day. It's nothing personal. It's not an attack against you directly or anything like that. But also on top of it, I think just the fact that I'm a lot bigger than a lot of people, puts people off, of course. But on top of that, I think that the brand that I've created is to the point where if any of these people tried to like approach me physically, you would just be creating a social media circus.
Yeah.
Which is not going to be good for you, which, could directly benefit me in a huge way, depending on how it turns out. Because the thing is, like, in the fucking internet era, like, all press is good press for the most part, and the thing is, like, I don't know if any of these people, like, really kind of want that fiasco on their hands, you know what I mean? Because it would be so much drama. It would just be so much, and as much as some artists might, try to come out on social media, on Instagram, and just act wild for attention, it's still very controlled. And there's still maybe more forethought going into it than maybe the audience realizes, because that person's being crazy on, Twitter or whatever. Again, there's probably more forethought going into it than some people realize, because at the end of the day, it's all for attention. It's all for clicks. It's all for traffic. And we've seen time and time again, like, when some artists try to fight in person, and of course you pull out those phones like right away, for someone it always looks bad. For someone it always looks embarrassing. For somebody it always looks terrible. Again, I don't know if if there's really anybody out there in the artists that I've reviewed that really have it out for me so much that they want to get into a physical altercation with me. I mean, it's been a while since I've had, an artist have a super negative reaction to a review, and even when that's happened, like, I never really got the sense that they were like threatening me physically or anything like that. I mean, I think maybe one of the more recent examples was probably like, I think Riff Raff got pissed off at my review of his like last record, and he was like saying like, "Oh, you didn't get drunk for the record, and you have to get drunk for it to like it," and I think he was just calling me boring or stuffy or a bitch or something. And but even in that situation, I didn't really get the sense that he was going to start a problem with me physically in person.
Somebody, not to cut you off, but somebody I think about that recently came at you, who's also known for being short-tempered, if I'm not mistaken, was Wale. Didn't he say something about you? So
yeah, and even in that situation, I didn't really feel like there was any kind of like, is this going to get physical? Is this a threat or anything like that? The only thing that really pushed it to that point was Vince Staples saying, "Okay, squabble up. You guys have to fight. You guys have to fight in person." And I was like, okay, well, Wally is not even really responding to this like that. Okay, like, yeah, let's do it. Time and place. So it's like, he didn't really say anything about it. But then Vince Staples was clearly just trying to come at it from like a spectacle. Because the thing is like, okay, you really want to set up a boxing match here? Like, where's the ring? What's the amount of money? Are we selling tickets? Like, the way he was kind of talking about it, it kind of seemed like we'd show up somewhere and they'd just be like filming on their iPhones and we'd just be fighting in the street or something.
Yeah.
Just like, the fuck is the point of any of that? Nothing against Vince Staples, though. I'm sure he's a a great guy, and he's very funny, and very talented too. But yeah, that's definitely an example of a more recent instance of somebody being pissed off at me. But even then, it just sort of seemed like, okay, you're pissed, and fair, I understand why you're pissed. But that doesn't change the fact that my opinion is my opinion, and I didn't really feel like my description of what I was talking about with that particular track on Twitter was that far off. But the thing is, I don't fault a lot of artists for reacting negatively to some of the things that I say, because sometimes my critiques are pretty harsh. I don't really pull any punches a lot of the time, and music for musicians is a super personal thing. I know it's easy for me as somebody who is, an outsider commenting on something somebody made, to kind of separate the art from you. Like, when I comment on the record that you made, I'm not commenting on you personally. This is not a comment on you. This is a comment of something that you made. But the thing is, a lot of people, and rightfully so, feel like their music is a representation of them. So if you attack what they make, they feel like it's an attack on them. Again, I don't think that that's necessarily true, but I understand that mindset, and I understand why you would get, upset about that, and why you would have feelings about that. So even when some people do get pissed off at me and do react negatively, I understand that that is the place that is coming from, and it's not 100% logical, but it is understandable. So when I do respond to that, understanding that, my reaction is not going to be, well, fuck you, pussy. You can't just take a fucking opinion, bitch. Because making and releasing music, it does put you in a very personal place. And if people don't have something or have something very negative to say about it, it can really hurt. There are some instances in which, I do really feel like an artist needs to fucking, man the fuck up. I think probably the biggest example of that in my head is when that story leaked about Chance the Rapper and his team,
I remember that, yeah.
Forcing MTV to sort of take down that very vaguely, not even super negative, mildly critical coverage that they didn't like the tone of. The thing is, it's, to me, just reacting on Twitter, just being like, I hate this shit, blah, 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 would have been more respectable than just, sneakily working behind the scenes and just being like, take this down, blah, 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 blah. That's maybe one of the only major instances in which, come on, dude, really? But when an artist reacts negatively, you just got to anticipate it sometimes. You got to accept it. You got to understand it. And I'm at the point sometimes where some artists react negatively to what I do, and it's not even really just about the fact that they make music and it's a personal thing for them, but sometimes artists react negatively negatively to what I've said because they watch me. So it's like they literally came up watching my stuff, then they make this record and I hate it. And then it's almost like it's like a triple insult. Because, oh man, it's like it hurts even more because this person who I put a lot of, I put a lot into their opinions, and now it's almost like a betrayal. I've been watching you since I was in high school or blah blah blah, and that can suck sometimes too. But the thing is, at the end of the day, I do what I do for my audience. I don't do what I do to be friends with rappers. I don't do what I do to be friends with, or hang out with rock bands. I don't do what I do to get record label people to like me. The only people I do this for is just music fans. If you're a music fan and you're the type of fan who kind of nerds out over music and you know a lot about music and you like musical discussion, you like talking with your friends about music and kind of arguing over, who's the best rapper, what's the best album from them, what was their best era, blah, 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 blah. If that's the type of discussion that you like to have, then you're who I'm making videos for. I'm not making videos to impress the people who made the music that I'm reviewing. It's great if you like it. It's great if you fuck with it. It's always nice to get great feedback from, somebody who made the album and they're like, hey man, this guy really fucking, this is the best review I got, or this is the most accurate review I got, or this guy noticed things and brought up things that other reviews didn't. Or it's really nice when I get a NeedleDrop review because, like, for the most part, he talks about the actual music, positive or negative, on the record. He's not so much talking about all the other bullshit or getting distracted or detour to do a bunch of other BS.
Yeah.
So it's always nice to get that feedback. The feedback from artists, positive or negative, you got to just kind of just take it and accept it, and just like most artists, just kind of take some of the negative opinions of their music and they got to swallow it and kind of move along. If somebody has some negative shit to say about what I do, I got to kind of swallow it and move along too.
I feel like I'm more susceptible to people actually like getting very much more mad at me, because although I do review music, if you say something in your music that I heavily disagree with, I'll make it like a stance to say like, hey, I thought that was not a smart thing to say. And I do agree that fans are kind of crazier than the artists, because I don't even use Reddit. And I remember I reviewed the Def Grips album one time, and somebody sent me a Reddit thread, and it was like, let's set up a fight between MC Rye and this little bitch. And I was like, what? And they were like sending the thread to MC Rye. No, I don't think MC Rye has a Twitter, but they were like trying to get the thread to MC Rye. They was like, yeah, show us to MC Rye. Let's let him beat this little fucker up. And I'm like, whoa. It's like, I don't want that. So I feel like that's a thing. And then I also, like I said, I feel like I'm outspoken about things. Like, for example, I really think Amir Van hates me. And I like Amir Van. I don't want him to hate me. But I reviewed the, I forget the album before the Saturations. Was it like All Star? It was something, I forget what it's called, but I reviewed that, and I remember I said something in there that he said something about like black women, and I was like, that was just trash, that was terrible. And he later on like tweeted something about it, and ever since then, like, he's probably like one of the only people that's like never like tweeted out my reviews from Brockhampton or said anything. And yeah, I don't think he likes me or not. So I feel like some people, I don't know, I just feel like when you're putting yourself out there, you have to open yourself up for critique. Like, even if I say something in my review that might be ignorant, that has nothing to do with music, I feel like I have to be open enough to be like, you know what, I shouldn't have said that. Or, hey, I still feel that way, but I feel that you feel that way, So I feel like some people are a little too, not say a little too sensitive, but just, they'll be more susceptible to go at you, and they probably should not, So I don't know, it's just weird.
No, it's true. And I think that that's a lesson that us as kind of, people who are reviewing on this new wave have to kind of learn, because previously, if you were a reviewer, you were employed by a publication. You were most likely just kind of listening to the album by yourself, hearing it for yourself, maybe talking to a few close friends about it. That's it. You couldn't go online and see what the reception is.
Yeah.
Like, you could, unless a bunch of other reviews were out already, you couldn't probably read a whole lot of other in-depth perspectives on it yet or already. Another person who's probably in your ear talking about it is probably like a PR person who's only going to tell you great things about the record. So the thing is, reviews at that point came from a very isolated place. Now, because we don't have, an example previous to us, we have to kind of like figure this out as we go along and understand that, okay, like, we're reviewing, but the thing is, like, we're very much, at the mercy of our audience. You know what I mean? Like, the review has to be good. You have to come at the review with good points.
Yeah.
You can't really shock people with a super negative review and just like a really bad score and just like throw 3 sentences out there and then it's just over and it's done with. Like, you have to like actually show up with like a argument. Even if people don't like what you're saying, like, you've got to try to back it up with logic and just like a solid point of view. So I think it's kind of making us work a little bit harder for it. You know what I mean? And I like that. I like the challenge. Overall, I think it kind of like, makes people more thoughtful listeners. But that also means a part of that lesson is understanding that other people have opinions too. Because people have almost like direct communication access to you through the internet. So, you get an instantaneous reaction, instantaneous feedback to everything that you say all the time. And there are some people who don't really work all that well under those conditions. You know, you have artists and you have content creators who like to make their content, then they like to completely disappear off the face of the planet until they have something new and they kind of return. You know, and that's understandable. Like the pressure of constantly dealing with like feedback and other people's opinions about what you do, it can be really hard if you're the type of person who is easily swayed or influenced, or if you're a really self-conscious person. You know, and I certainly at one time most likely was, but the thing is, like, I had to, you know, force myself through a choice of, okay, am I going to do this by my own terms, or am I going to constantly be making myself miserable by allowing any time the audience says anything negative about what I've said to basically just change my mind and flip-flop and just fold, which I thought in the long term was going to catch up with me, because people eventually will see a pattern of that. You know, they'll say, okay, well, you know, anytime that Fantano says something that people don't like, he fucking, you know, just fucking bitches out, or, you know, he just says anything that's popular is good because he doesn't want to see a negative reaction to it. You know, people aren't as dumb as, you know, you might assume that they are. You know, like, you know, especially, you know, I'm not trying to say my audience are like fucking geniuses or anything like that, but I will say that they are very critically minded, because I critique things all the time.
Yeah.
So, and I can't say that they go through life like that all the time, but I at least know that they are highly critical of what I do. So if there's ever a moment where I'm inconsistent, or they feel like they, you know, found a phrase from one review that they can apply in a negative fashion to another review, you know, it's like it's always there and it's always happening, and I always have to be trying to cover all my bases and make sure that not only am I saying, not only what I'm saying does it make sense, but does it also make sense in context with everything fucking else that I've ever said, which anybody could bring up.
Yeah.
You know, it does sort of like put me in a position where, you know, I'm almost like walking a tightrope, but I've been doing it for so long, and I've gotten so much practice doing it. You know, I feel like I'm okay. I feel like I'm doing a good job.
It's funny you bring that up, because I was going to ask you, is there anything that your fans or just people that comment on your videos bring up that made you self-conscious about something that you wasn't self-conscious about before? Like if it was something you said a lot, stutter, I don't know, anything that you were just like, damn, like I never realized that, and it made you self-conscious about it.
I guess two examples would probably be, you know, for a little while, like maybe around 2012 or 13, when trap music wasn't as nearly popular as it is right now, but it was still like very much on the upward trend, and I was reviewing a lot more albums in that style. And as a result, in order to just kind of like not have to go through the motions of explaining what the sound is again and again and again and again, I would just sometimes say things are trap flavored, or I just say, you know, things are like, you know, trap instrumental, blah 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 blah. And you know, there were some people here and there saying, you say trap flavored a lot, or you keep saying that this is that, and I don't even know what the hell that is. And you know, and it sort of dawned on me that like I grew up in the middle of a very different era of hip hop. You know what I mean? And now, in retrospect, after having experienced it, like now I understand. Like, I mean, back in the, like, sure, while I could hear the differences between a Biggie and a Tupac, or like a Public Enemy, or you know, even like a rap band like Rage Against the Machine. Like, as a kid, I didn't fully understand all of the genre breakdowns and all of the influences and all the competing regions, like stylistically and artistically. You know, I'm just a kid, and I'm just like enjoying music that I hear on the radio, or I hear on MTV, or you know, I hear my friends' tapes or whatever. You know, but now in retrospect, I understand the G-funk, the boom bap, the hardcore, the golden age. You know, all those breakdowns, and I'm not fully understanding that. You know, as an older listener with a younger audience, that some of these kids, to them, the music that they're listening to right now, it's just hip hop music. It's just new music. You know what I mean? They don't understand how trap works in the greater context of all Southern hip hop, of West Coast, of East Coast, of Midwest stuff. You know, of UK hip hop. You know, so it's like you kind of have to try to put in that extra effort to make those little subtle extra explanations of things, just so people, you know, can kind of make those connections and not be so far removed from the conversation. Like, there's always going to be some people who don't understand everything that I'm going on and on about. but I try to leave at least enough descriptive information in there so that people have something to go off of if they want to Google it or look up another review in that style or something like that. So there is that element of it, not to try to crutch myself too much on super simple descriptive words or phrases that I make up, because they can become kind of a meme, and you can say them so many times that they kind of lose their meaning. Yeah. So there is that aspect to it. And the other aspect to it, much earlier on, I was definitely more self-conscious about some of the opinions that I would have, because it was the first point at which I was getting like a large negative reaction to some of the stuff that I was saying, because the audience was growing, and it was like, oh man, like, am I wrong? Do I not know what I'm saying? Like, people are just really pissed off, at my actual opinion that I worked a while to sort of come to. Yeah. Am I crazy? And reviews like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy are definitely like a prime example of that, because at the time, I'm fine with it now, but at the time, like, that was the first largest negative reaction I had ever gotten to anything that I did, and around the time it was like, oh man, like, I've never had a large group of people on the internet so pissed off at me all at once. But I've with time sort of learned to just kind of understand that is a part of the equation of doing this. If you stay true to your opinions and you stay true to your point of view, eventually you're going to come to a point with the audience where you're going to have an impasse. You're not going to like everything that they like. They're not going to like everything you like. You just try to find as much middle ground as you can, going forward. But, there are going to be moments where you are at opposite ends, and you just got to have to move through that growing pain, and accept that that's partially what makes things kind of interesting. You bring up the Death Grips thing. Sometimes one of my favorite things to do online, if I have a little extra time and I'm just sticking around and I'm, maybe doing some work, and I'm already thinking about music stuff, is, I'll look up a super negative review of an album that I like, just to kind of like see somebody just like totally shit on it or tear it apart or have like a totally opposite reaction to, what I felt about it, or even just to kind of react to it like, this fucking idiot, they can't fucking, they don't know shit, probably just the same reaction that you would have if you saw a super like dumb, insulting, vulgar, negative review of something that you thought was amazing. So it is pretty funny and interesting sometimes to see somebody whose opinions that you follow pretty closely to have like such a supremely terrible reaction to this thing that you think is amazing or you think is really good. It does, even though people might have a nasty reaction to it, it does make for interesting entertainment, which, I've come to appreciate.
I just want to say that in the middle of this interview, I want to thank you for being such a good person to interview, because I have asked nothing that I plan to ask, and you gave me so much content to go off of. And some people I interview, like, they just don't know what to say, and I understand, because a lot of people don't know how to. A lot of people like just don't know how to converse with other people. But you have just given me so much, and I feel like that's a talent in itself, to just know how to talk. Like, I feel like if you got in trouble with the cops, you could definitely talk your way out of it. Like, I feel like you would like you would like, they would be talking to you about a murder. You would start talking about how you want like some vegan restaurant or something. They're like, oh, I'm pretty hungry too. Like, they forget you even killed somebody. So I feel like you give so much just great things and great talking points. That is amazing. And it's just a couple things that like I did want to get into before we got into the fan questions and we ended this. And one of those things where you are a person that, like, the answer to this question might be because you don't primarily cover hip hop. You cover every genre. There's a lot of white people on earth. A lot of white people who do a lot of things. Some of those white people cover hip hop. You cover hip hop sometimes. And a lot of these people that cover hip hop that are white are either called cops, culture vultures, racist, and everything in between that's not good. I feel like you specifically have received the less of that, like the good end of that stick. Like, you don't get it that much from what I see. Maybe you get it all the time. But I feel like in comparison to people like people that you got to interview, Adam 22, somebody like Vlad, and just various other white people, they get it way more. Is there a reason you think you get it a little bit less than they do?
I will say at first when I began reviewing hip hop on the channel, which again I didn't start doing that. Not that I didn't love the genre before, but I didn't feel as comfortable reviewing it as I did rock and pop music. Which when I started the channel, I mean, it's not even a limitation to hip hop, because at the start of the channel, I decided I wasn't even going to review mainstream music. I'm just going to review underground rock records, because I don't know. I thought if I reviewed too many things, like that would just be confusing, and that, again, nobody was really doing this before I was doing it, in such a way where it was huge or blew up. So, there's no handbook. Nobody said this is how you do it. This is what you do. This is what you don't do. I had to figure it all out. So, I thought at first, like, I was kind of uncomfortable with reviewing, not just hip hop, but metal music a lot of the time, electronic music a lot of the time, because I thought it would just be too different, too outside. It would be harder to find an audience. Like, I didn't really know.
Yeah.
So, I didn't feel 100% comfortable with reviewing it, and it did make me even more uneasy doing so when I started to cover it, around 2010, I was getting a lot of reactions like, you don't really like the genre, why the fuck are you reviewing it, your opinions on all this shit are like super stupid and head ass and all this other stuff, although I don't think people are using that term then, but whatever. It didn't help, and then when I did the My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy review, even though I had done some hip-hop reviews up until that point that were positive, like I think I gave the new Roots album a super positive review, How I Got Over, that year, which is a great album. But, I had said to myself, okay, like, I'm reviewing bigger rock records and pop records at this point. I'm reviewing underground stuff. I am reviewing rap records when they're big and they're relevant. But if I'm going to go forward into 2011, continuing to review hip-hop, I cannot continue just reviewing the most mainstream popular stuff. Yeah. Like, I know there's great hip-hop out there. I know there's great underground hip-hop out there. I used to listen to a ton of it in high school and college. But, I had just sort of convinced myself to focus on this rock and pop stuff for the channel right then and there. And I said, if I continue to go forward, I have to review more underground, up-and-coming rap artists. And 2011 just so happened to be when, Kendrick came up, Danny Brown came up, Lil B was making a lot of noise too. I think I reviewed Milo's mixtape. I wish my brother George was here around that time, and put some gas in the tank for his career. That's when Death Grips came up too. So in 2011, there just so happened to be at this time that I decided to start covering it more intently, like this really huge groundswell of like great underground and sort of up-and-coming rap artists on the internet. A$AP Rocky, dropped that year too, with the Live Love A$AP tape. So there were a lot of great and exciting up-and-comers that dropped that year. Which I hopped on that wave immediately. If I didn't decide to sort of make that decision right then and there, I don't think I would have. I'd probably still be stuck in that position where I don't have the appreciation for the contemporary stuff that I do now, and I would probably also still be getting that terminology thrown at me because I think a lot of people came to realize that you may not agree with everything that I say. I may come from a different background than a lot of other rappers do, but I can still appreciate the genre. I appreciate what makes it great. I appreciate when a fantastic record does come out for the most part. And, I have used my platform to celebrate those albums when they do come out and they are great. I've come out and said, Good Kid, Mad City is an amazing record. I've come out and I've said, To Pimp a Butterfly is one of the best records as far as the genre is concerned of the decade. And, that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as, like, super positive hip-hop records that I praised. And also, I've done what I can to put artists on in the genre. I've literally used my platform to boost the careers of artists who before didn't really have much going on in terms of buzz or attention. And I, personally know that from my reviews, there are at least a handful of artists who have gotten signed, because the PR person came up to me afterward and said, hey, we didn't know who this was after, before your review. We thought they were great. We thought they were amazing. We signed them. Um, and, there are also instances that I can note. I'm having a bit of a brain fart here. Um, where I didn't necessarily blow the person up or anything like that, but I said that artist was really great early on, and then they went on to do like amazing things. So I think I've sort of proven myself in that I have an appreciation. I have a respect. Even though you may think some of my reviews are harsh, I appreciate and I respect the art form. And, I would like to think that that's why, that terminology is thrown at me as much these days. It still does here and there, but, I would like to think that's partially why. I can't speak for, the audience, obviously. I don't know why, if you're telling me as an outsider, who's observing it from an eagle-eye view, that terminology is being used less on me than it is on like DJ Vlad or Adam 22. Like, I'll trust you on that. But I can tell you why I think it's not happening to me as much. I don't so much know why the crowd would continue to sort of say that to them. You'd have to ask somebody else.
Yeah.
But I think that's at least why it's different for me.
I feel like something else in that realm that I always thought about with you. I don't know. Let's say if I was a fan of Scottish culture. See, I grew up liking Roddy Piper. I listened to a couple bagpipes. I like the culture from a distance. And I feel like black people look at rap culture as their culture. It's almost like, so if you're not from their culture, then you're kind of like a outsider. You can be let in, but you're still outsider. So I feel like, let's say if I went to Scotland and I start reviewing Scottish culture, I'm still an outsider. Even though I may appreciate it from a distance, I'm still an outsider. I feel like, well, something I always wonder, have you ever listened to rap music and you felt like maybe if I was from the culture, born in that culture, raised around it all the time, I would have liked this music better? Because I feel like if I'm listening to some Scottish song or whatever, some people may like it more because of the slang, just cultural nostalgia that they may have because they're brought up in that culture. Have you ever listened to a rap album or just any album that you weren't per se brought in or raised up in that culture, and you're like, you know what, maybe if I was, actually raised in this specific culture, I would be like, oh, this is a better album?
I think if I was, I could definitely say it would speak to me differently. You know what I mean? There's definitely something to be said for, hey, what this person is saying on this record, like that person's experience is close to my experience, and it's validating to sort of feel like that's, being put out there onto an album. But the thing is, like, that doesn't even just go for hip hop. That goes for everything.
Yeah.
Because, doing what I do, it's not even just rap music. I have to listen to people's perspectives all the time that do not mirror my own in any way, shape, or form. And, like I said, it's not just a hip hop thing. That happens to a great degree whenever I'm listening to, even like a female artist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to do my best to listen to this woman's lived experience in her music, which as a woman is probably very different from my experience. I have to appreciate it. I have to try to do my best to appreciate it on that level and understand it on that level and appreciate it and sort of, just sort of come at it at that angle. And it's not even really just kind of like strictly a rap specific thing, because there are some rap records that I feel like, say things that I think are super relatable, but then again, there are others that I can enjoy that, most people who listen to rap music, black, white alike, probably don't relate to too much in terms of, like, let's say Pusha T's Daytona, the extravagance of that album, the richness of that album, the drug dealing, so on and so forth. Like, that's not everybody's life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, most people are coming at that record like, okay, this is like, so far removed from the life that I lead. This is so far removed from my walk of life, my experience, but I can still appreciate it. I still enjoy it. To me, relatability on an album is good. It can be good if an album relates to you. That's great, but it can be a little overrated. And I think relatability can also trick you into thinking an album is better than it is. Because you relate to it, because you feel it on that relatable level. you might think it's better
Yeah.
than again it actually is. And I think also some of that relatability, quote unquote, might also have to do with just how much music you actually listen to outside your comfort zone, because there's also something similar going on with metal music in the metal community. There are a lot of people in the metal fandom who pretty much only listen to metal, and they're very forgiving when a metal album is just okay.
Mm-hmm.
But because I'm not necessarily directly indebted to just that music scene, I can kind of come in and say, nope, this is not that good.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah.
Whereas like if you come up in that scene, if you're writing specifically for that scene and for that scene only, and all the friends that you have are people in that scene, like most likely you're not going to come at a record that is just okay, or a record that is kind of falling below the mark with like
Mm-hmm.
the teeth out. You might not be as viciously critical, because in a way you're kind of shitting where you eat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like me personally, I've got records and reviews and fingers in the pie, a little bit of everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to like diversify and just kind of like spread out the things that I cover, so that when I'm listening to a record, I'm kind of viewing it in the grander scheme of things. Like, sure, your record might be passable if we sort of boil it down to this particular micro genre within a larger genre, within a movement, within a specific period of time. But like, is your album great in the grander scheme of music? To Pimp a Butterfly isn't just a great hip hop record; it's a great record.
Yeah.
Period. Like, that album can go toe to toe with many records completely outside of the genre, because it's so good. The concepts are so great. The musical composition is so quality. The production is so excellent. The lyricism and the narrative of the whole record is so interesting that that record is great in music in general. And that's what I feel like I'm trying to discover. I'm not trying to discover what the greatest record within a certain genre is. I'm trying to discover what the greatest record is in the grander scheme of things, in general, within the whole art form of music.
Well, last question for me, and then we'll get to these fan questions really quickly. I feel like you listen to so much music. When sometimes I need to take a break from the music, I feel like I need space to myself. I need time to just think. So when you do have that time to think and be to yourself, what are things outside of music that interest you, that just like takes your mind off of music?
I like to watch really bad reality television with my wife. I like to exercise. I like to play Super Smash Brothers, play bass. Just consume ridiculous internet memes and Instagram meme pages. Maybe go out and see a movie or cook. I actually like cooking quite a bit. And just, if I did say it already, just spend time with my family. So
What reality?
I try to do my best. I try to do my best just to like unplug from it, so that when I have to come at another record, it does feel like I've hit the reset button a little bit, and it also does kind of make it easier with having to review so many different genres, because if I only had to review the same genre again and again and again and again and again, throughout the rest of time, like it definitely would get easier to get burnt out on it. But because I'm kind of reviewing a variety of things and listening to a variety of things, I may review a rock record, but the next time I might be reviewing some kind of electronic or industrial or jazz record or something like that. And with that diversity, it does make it a little easier to, again, hit the reset button and kind of come at the whole thing from a different angle, because once I'm listening to a totally different genre of music, it's kind of like it's itching my brain in a totally different way, so it's a little harder to get really numb really quickly.
What terrible reality shows do you watch?
My favorite terrible reality show at the moment, which I don't think is very popular, and I hope it gets renewed because it just put out one season. It's called Love After Lockup, and it's literally about people who start relationships with inmates, like through their websites that their websites you can go on where you can become pen pals, and they have picture profiles up there and and like these people start relationships and they just all go terrible. They all go awry. Like everything awful that you can imagine happening does happen, and you just wonder why they didn't see it coming from like 10 miles away. And it's funny. It's funny because you assume like, oh, they're gonna, they're marrying an inmate. What are you, an idiot?
Yeah.
What are you, a dumbass? They're gonna come out and be a total monster and a terrible person. But actually, sometimes the person on the outside is actually kind of the monster.
Yeah.
Because what you don't realize is that some of these people, the reason they aren't dating normal people who aren't in jail or whatever, is because they're probably really controlling, and that person won't deal with them being controlling.
Mm-hmm.
But an inmate comes out of prison, they're on probation, they can't go anywhere, they can't do anything. They're basically like under your control, and their whole livelihood depends on you. And there are some people, unfortunately, on the show who clearly get off on that, and sort of want like a caged bird.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of want somebody who they have under their control, and they can't really do or say anything without their permission. So it is an interesting show.
Sounds like it. All right, well, let's get into these fan questions. We can wrap this up. Shout out to KTT for the fan questions. Shout out to KTT. First fan question comes from me because I feel like I need to put my fan question in.
Okay. What's your fan question?
I have to be very self-absorbed and get my fan question in. My fan question is, I've always wondered, have you heard this album? Because I know you like very weird, off-kilter things. And I was curious, have you ever heard Bilal's In Another Life?
Bilal?
Bilal. Are you familiar with Bilal?
I'm familiar with his stuff because he's done a lot of features with some artists that I enjoy, and he also was, I think, on this weird kind of futuristic experimental R&B project that I liked a while back called Logos. But I don't think I've heard that record. No.
It's like I don't know how to explain it. It's like if a scary movie had like an R&B soundtrack, it would be this. It's like his vocals are like horrifying. It's like he sounds like he just got shot. It's crazy. It's like it's crazy. I always wonder if you ever heard that.
Just message to me on Instagram.
I will. All right. So first real question comes from BRRB. He says, "What do you rate Man on the Moon 1?"
What do I rate Man on the Moon 1? Probably like a 7 to an 8. I think it's a very good record, and I think it's a pretty cutting edge record too. There are some things about Kid Cudi's voice that I do have struggles with. But I do think it is a great and a cutting edge record, and I think there weren't any other artists out there around the time that sounded like that.
Yeah.
Kid Cudi was really ahead of the time. I mean, right now we sort of see like really moody, dark, depressing, sort of melodic hip hop music is kind of like being the new wave. But like Kid Cudi was so ahead of that. You know what I mean? Like Man on the Moon 1 was just like, in some ways it's kind of a flawed record, like 808s and Heartbreak. But you got to kind of respect. But there are also a lot of great musical moments on it, and you got to kind of respect it for being as pioneering as it was.
Moroccan as crunchy or creamy peanut butter?
At one point I was pretty much exclusively creamy, but that was because I hadn't even appreciated crunchy fully yet. So now I'm pretty much crunchy all the way.
All right. Free Nizzy asks, would he ever work with a big company or expand out beyond YouTube like Academics and Big Quint?
Has Big Quint worked with somebody outside of YouTube?
He just like signed I guess like a deal with Hot New Hip Hop where they post all his videos and he do like exclusive content for them.
Oh, that's cool. Well, as of right now, the channel is signed with Complex, and basically how it works is they just like, you see YouTube ads run before my videos. Sometimes, or at least a good chunk of the time, some of those advertisements are not being sold by YouTube AdSense, but they're being sold and placed there by Complex. Now, you can't really tell the difference as an outsider, and I can't really tell the difference either. Sometimes I don't know which ad is a Complex ad or which ad is a YouTube AdSense ad. All I know is that it's happening, and it puts some extra money in my pocket at the end of every month. So there is that aspect of it, but I haven't tried to. They haven't reached out to me all that many times to be like, hey, come down to the offices, we'll make content together. But honestly, like they've also asked me too if I want to like pitch a show to them. If I have a show idea, pitch a show. We can do a show if the people over there like it. And I haven't really, I haven't really done that either. You know what I mean? And I guess. I guess I just kind of like doing my own thing on my own terms. Like I seem happy with it. They seem happy with it. I like being independent. I like kind of being a lone wolf type character. I like doing things at my own pace. I love things sort of being totally under my control and everything. I mean, maybe one day I'll kind of get the desire to kind of step outside of that comfort zone and just be like, okay, maybe, I have a genius idea for a show now. Hear me out. Let's do X, Y, and Z. I'll come down there and we'll shoot it, and so on and so forth. But as of right now, I guess I haven't had that epiphany moment, and I've just enjoyed kind of being in my own little world over here with my family, and just kind of again doing things on my own terms.
Working by yourself compared to working for somebody is actually something I wanted to ask you one day. I'll ask you after this interview is over, though. Anyway, Childhood asks, ask him what is his thoughts on the band Sweet Trip, specifically velocity, design, comfort, and if you think that album is a classic.
Yeah, that album is certainly a classic, one of the better albums of the 2000s, and definitely one of the few records that you could say is sort of like this really weird futuristic combination of like electronic music and shoegaze and like weird neo psychedelic sounds too. So no, it's definitely a great record.
Dat Cloho asks, ask him why does he always compare Freddie Gibbs' work with Pinata? It's like he's expecting Gibbs to make Pinata over and over again. He's been making music like that before years. He's been making music like this years before Pinata.
I think that's just because of it's a contextual comparison, and it really doesn't run too much deeper than that. It's not that I'm looking for him to make Pinata over again, but I'm referencing that project because it's his biggest project. If it weren't for that project, a lot of people wouldn't be listening to Freddie at all.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of understand that like even Freddie is artistically working within the context of Pinata. Like he's actively working in the context of that record because I'm sure as an artist he's trying not to make the same record over again.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like he probably wants to progress somewhere artistically, and in order to do that, he needs to be aware of where he's been so that he can go somewhere different. So again, when I bring up Pinata, it's not necessarily because I think I want him to make the same record twice, and I don't even really agree fully with the idea because I've been listening to his music for a while too. I mean, I think that album was kind of a standout moment for him. I don't think that he's been making music exactly like Pinata for years. Certainly he's been making good hip hop music for a while, but when I bring it up, it's just merely contextual. It's not to downgrade anything that he's doing now, and it's not to say that he should be coming out with another Pinata thing like that. I mean, it would be cool if him and Madlib got together again, but it's just a contextual thing.
Stella asks, is he ever going to remake a new channel for the memes, reviews, and such?
Right now, as far as meme content goes, the reason I'm not doing it is because YouTube has totally demonetized that channel and totally demonetized that content. I'm pretty sure that this whole YouTube adpocalypse thing functions on at least some kind of a blacklist or some kind of list or something. Mm-hmm. Because when I make a video on the Fantano channel that gets demonetized as according to these new YouTube rules for monetization, like my next video will be demonetized, the next video will be demonetized, unless I sort of like fly right and behave, like all of my forthcoming videos just get demonetized instantly. That and my views get cut down too, which I think a lot of the audience doesn't necessarily understand when it comes to the demonetization thing, because when your video is demonetized, YouTube will not recommend that video to anybody. So not only are you not making money off of the video because it's not getting any ads or as many ads, but also YouTube just basically decides we're not going to promote your videos, we're not going to shove your videos in front of anybody's face, so your views get cut in half too. I'm talking like literally overnight, or literally within like the span of less than a month, the channel went from making thousands of dollars a month to just like $400 a month maybe. and like that's not feasible. You know,
Yeah.
as fun as it was to make some of the content, well, as fun as it was to make all the content, you know, and you even appeared in a video too, which I thank you for that because that was a funny video. As fun as it was to make the content, kind of dick around and just be silly, and part of the reason I like that channel is it allowed me to like totally break out of my routine and just be like, okay, I'm just going to make some random shit about something or upload some random shit from somebody else that I think is silly or ridiculous or kind of feeds into some sort of meme or something. You know, the thing is, I'm also on YouTube to make money. You know what I mean? I'm on YouTube to make a living. Like, if I can do it while having fun and dicking around and doing some meme shit, great. Like, if I can't, then, you know, I need to sort of try to use my time effectively while I'm on here because, I mean, I'm in it for the long haul, but I don't know how long it's going to last. You know, at the end of the day, like, it's kind of the audience and it's the crowd and it's just the industry that decides, you know, how long you're relevant, how long you're on, how long you last. And, you know, I want to maximize this for as long as I can, you know, until the point where the wheels fucking fall off of it, or I can, you know, go into some kind of early retirement where I'm just like, you know, either not doing it all or just doing it like purely on my own standards, only talking about things that I'm ever interested about, you know, purely and simply, and that's it. So, you know, I just want to like make this YouTube thing work for as long as I can, and even though I would like to go back to making some meme content, I don't think it's feasible on YouTube.
Yeah.
I am sort of pitching content in that style around to a few different outlets, and you know, we'll kind of see if it goes anywhere.
Okay.
But that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
All right, last two questions. Mr. Noah asks, also, excuse me, he said, asks if he thinks music journalism has become hive-minded, possibly as a consequence to popetism.
As a consequence of what?
As a consequence to poptism.
Oh, optimism. I think music journalism has become a bit hive-minded, but I don't know if it has much to do with poptimism in the grander scheme of things. I mean, poptimism I don't necessarily see as a bad thing because I do think there are a lot of great pop records out there that are worthy of the critical ear that you would give to a record in any other genre. And I think poptimism in the internet age is not necessarily as harmful as it might have been a decade or so ago because, you know, with the internet now, creativity between the mainstream and the underground is very much more a two-way street. You know, it's not as much the case as it used to be where pop is just all the way up here, it's hoisted on high, it's separate and away from anything and everything else going on in the underground. There are artists in the underground that are exploding into the mainstream all the time. And, you know, it's meant for a lot more choice and a lot more variation in the greater landscape of music. Maybe not so much in the top 40, but you still have options out there. If music journalism is hive-minded, I think it has less to do with poptimism and more to do with the fact that a lot of the music publications that you see out there, the major ones, they are now owned by very large multimedia corporations, like Condé Nast is an example. And as a result, there is not as much journalistic independence as there used to be. There is not as much money to go around as there used to be. There's not as much coverage devoted to what's interesting, what's obscure, what's cutting edge, what's bubbling up, as much as there is coverage handed over to what we know is going to get clicks. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like when, you know, the new Drake album comes out, you know, there, of course everybody's going to have a Drake review, but leading up to the point of the Drake review, we are going to be subjected to dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and fucking dozens of articles about Drake. You know, because every single one of those articles about Drake is going to get tons of hits. You know, so there's not going to be as much coverage devoted to, you know, when a cool new up-and-coming artist who people might not know about is doing something awesome because, hey, even though it might be good music, like, it's not going to get as many clicks as, you know, an article that says, Drake says that his baby mama, you know, so on and so forth, this, that, and the other thing, you know. So because clicks have become the business model and because these companies have to serve this business model, you know, sort of thrusted upon them by the companies that they've been bought out by, because they have to turn a profit at the end of the day. That's all that companies like Condé Nast care about. You know, they care more about that than they do about the journalistic integrity of a company that they own. Because of that, you're seeing less diversity, you're seeing less independence, you're seeing less experimentation and risk taking, and also I'm sure that there are some sites who are kind of afraid of the social media backlash of endorsing certain artists who might be super problematic or something like that. Because the thing is, like, you know, you endorse some new up and coming underground artist, you don't know if like 2 weeks from now they get some kind of like crazy accusation against them or whatever. They get like, you know, some kind of fucking insane police report comes out about them that somehow looks bad upon you because, you know, you sort of put their career on. So, you know, a lot of these sites and a lot of these publications, they're not as ready and willing to just sort of jump on some of these more underground artists who they don't necessarily have a way to vet or verify whether or not that person is going to keep their nose clean.
Last question comes from Flizzy. He says, does he even like doing this many reviews, or does that put pressure on him? Like, not now specifically because he's been on tour, but usually he's expected to drop a review a few days after the album drops. I think he's the only music reviewer to so much listen to albums by himself.
Yeah, I think I mean, as of this point, I think I've just gotten used to the routine. You know, there have been times in the past where it's been tough to just kind of keep up with the demand, and certainly right now it does feel that way to an extent because of the whole tour situation. It did kind of knock me off my schedule, and it did put me in a place where I've just now gotten to the point where I've caught up on all the records that I've been wanting to talk about. You know, I just reviewed the Jay-Z and Beyonce, which, like, that came out in the middle of fucking last month. And now pretty much everything that I'll be talking about from here on out is new or newer. You know, with a spare record here and there that's older but maybe more obscure, so at least it'll be new to the audience. As far as, like, hype records people have been kind of down my throat to fucking review, you know, there are still a few out there, but now I feel like I've kind of caught up to where I need to be for the most part. So it can be kind of hard kind of keeping up with the pacing, especially if there's an album that drops and I literally need to like drop everything to review it, like Drake's Scorpion. That does tend to throw a monkey wrench in the works. And then on top of it, if the album is 90 fucking minutes long, you know, it also throws a monkey wrench in the works because it's like, I'm like spending 2 times as much time listening to this as I would if you just came out with a record that was 45 minutes. You know what I mean? So it's like I've double the effort goes into the whole listening process. So if a record is so huge, it just halts the presses, and if a record is super long, it can make, you know, the pacing of everything really difficult. But for the most part, you know, if everything is kind of going to schedule, and, you know, the albums aren't like 3.5 hours long or some bullshit like that. It's actually, you know, it's become pretty easy to manage because I've been doing it for so long. I'm just kind of used to the pacing. I'm used to the process. You know, even though I do have to digest and listen to a lot of different albums, I at least know at the end of that process what has to happen. You know, even though the album may be different and I have to listen to it as if it's a new experience every time, at the end of the day, I still have to write a review. That review still has to get shot. That review still has to look a certain way. And that stuff I have down to a science. So even if the listening process and the writing process does take a while, I can get down in front of the camera, bust out what I got to say, send it over to my friend, he'll chop it up, pass it back to me, and I can literally get the whole video editing, all the technical stuff done within a few hours, you know, and get it exported in 10 minutes, and then it's up. You know, it's the listening and the writing that takes a while. It takes a few days. It is the hardest part. But you know, at least everything else up until this point has gotten easier. You know, I say sometimes if all I had to do was write reviews, like, this process would almost be like easier. You know, I would actually have time to listen to more records and do more reviews because, you know, the whole shooting and editing and processing and, you know, putting the final touches and everything like that, all of that process, it does take up quite a bit. You know, it's gotten faster, it's gotten better, but you know, sometimes the most exhausting thing about all of it
is all the stuff that I have to do that's not related to listening to music and writing reviews. Like doing the social media stuff, doing the merchandising stuff, trying to plan on doing big projects here and there, like a Cal song or a Cal album or a tour or something like that. All that stuff that isn't necessarily directly review related. Sometimes that stuff is the most difficult and the most tiring.
Yeah, it's crazy you bring up writing as the most hardest part, because when I don't respect the album, I think it's really bad. When I write a review, I'm definitely like, it's almost like writing a stand up, like, cause like I'm clowning the album at this point, and it's like I'm always like writing like a stand up routine. And that's kind of like, it's not an easy thing to do, to just like write like to also, like you said, to entertain, to inform. You're doing a lot. So yeah, I think people really don't understand the 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 difficulty in that. And then you also bring up Cal. That's another thing a lot of people ask is, when is the Cal album coming?
I'm trying to make it happen at some point this year. There are quite a few tracks. There's about like 7 or 8 tracks to it. I wonder if I'm going to sort of like get the rest of those tracks finished and then just drop it as if it's like a short, good music Kanye style album or something like that. Since that's now a thing, or if I'm gonna plunge forward, like try to make 6 more cuts, put skits in the middle of all of it, and have it be like this giant fucking juggernaut type thing. As of right now, I don't know what size and shape this thing is going to take, but it's definitely going to come out this year at some point. So,
well, the number one reviewing nerd and the number one journalist on the earth right now just gave you guys a classic interview. I want to ask you, is there anything else you got to say before we get out of here?
Just follow me, the NeedleDrop channel, Fantano channel, twitter.com/the NeedleDrop, Instagram, Fantano, and the NeedleDrop on Facebook. You guys are the best. Anthony Fantano, Eric, You Ain't Packing Meat, interviews, the NeedleDrop, forever.
Until next time, I say what I mean what I say. Haters are going to hate, and players are going to play. Holla at your boy.